Because before we get into all of that, um, we did a recording before, but it didn't turn out very well because my recording skills were terrible and my camera, my video editing skills were also terrible. So we're gonna like redo, but now with a core theme. So before we get into it, tell us about you, your history, and what you're doing now.
Probably about 2 years ago now, I got approached by one of my former great colleagues that I love to work with, and he had actually built his own managed integration service and the associated platform. So all the tech was proprietary. And I knew him to be a great software developer and a great consultant. And yeah, just kind of got interested because even though integrations was not something I'd ever dealt with before in my career, I still felt, just working together with this guy and some of the other people that were in business with him could be really exciting and potentially something for the longer term because I was sort of not too naive in knowing that it would take a long time to build something like this. It wasn't a quick game. So that's kind of where it started out. He had been going for a few years, so he tested his solution in the Dutch market because that's where we used to work together. And he was just looking for international expansion and didn't have any interest in doing SPAC himself. So I took on that challenge and found a co-founder here, and off we went. So that's been almost 2 years now. 2 weeks, I wish, no, but 2 years. And so
You went into this and you said you knew it was not going to be an overnight thing. Like it's not going to be like an immediate success, which I think is very different to most startup founders. I think at least the ones I talk to go into it hoping at least that it would be an overnight success. They would build it and suddenly there will be just a ton of business and they're going to be the next Facebook. They're going to be the next Instagram. They're going to be the next whatever. But you have a more, I think, realistic view. So why did you have that more grounded view of, well, momentum?
Oh, well, I think just two things, and it was really experience. So, in one of my finance jobs, I had looked after the entrepreneurship work that UNSW, one of our large universities in Australia, do, and I'd seen loads of startups going through loads of programs, and face that reality, and So I guess I'd been really close to a group of experts in that space, and I just learned from being close to them. Secondly, I knew from my business partners who had set it up in the Netherlands that it took them years to even though they already had a better network to start off with than I had when I started. So I was just I didn't have a lot of illusions. Hopes, yes, probably still a little bit. You have to be a little bit hopeful. You can't be pessimistic the whole time because then it's really hard to motivate yourself to do anything. But I kind of knew that the chances would be low.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. Why integration? And I want to frame it in a slightly different way, which is everybody in the sort of B2B space talk about the importance of integration. But very few people actually go into the business of building connectors and integration and these integrators. What made you decide this was a good path?
So it's actually very adjacent to some of the forensic data work that Tom and I did a long time ago at KPMG, the Netherlands, because realistically, what you're doing in kind of forensic data analytics is solving people's problems by getting data from systems, and it's really hard to get that data. Like there's no straightforward report. Otherwise, you don't get an external consultant involved at the associated rates, and you've got to make sense of it, and you've got to do so in a really reliable, robust way, because it might go to court, or there might be a regulator involved. So I guess that was the experience that we shared. Obviously he was super technical, and I was more on the customer side and understood things well enough to explain them, but would never code, kind of thing. So it's really very similar. So we're not working in the forensic arena anymore as such, but integrations need to be like as reliable and robust, I would say, because key business processes depend on them. And I think our strength is that we do it as a managed service. So again, like consultancy service, that's kind of where that transferable skill set comes into play. And we're able to literally handle anything that has an API or some kind of connector point. We can be creative, and that's what you learn in forensic, because you can't really have the luxury of focusing only on SAP, or like some other IT consultants can really dedicate themselves to a particular thing, but you just can't. So I think it's sort of logical in a weird way, not obvious, not in an obvious way, but there's a lot of logic to it. And I think Tom had gathered around him a lot of really brilliant technical people. And I think he also quite deliberately was looking for a different skill set, because he's aware that, it's often the coming together of different skill sets that ultimately, in the full journey makes something a success. So that's the story there.
That's so interesting. And first of all, I didn't realize there was like so many parallels between forensic data analysis and actually like building integrators. Like that to me is just, it makes sense once you hear it.
I know.
And that's really cool. So when you got into this 2 years ago, how did you go about building your Rolodex? and I'm using Rolodex, and then I realized, oh my gosh, am I from the 90s?
You might lose some audience there. Yeah, you need to put in a little subtitle. Yeah.
What is Rolodex?
But I'm old enough. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So how did you go about building it, your contact list?
Yeah, it's funny, because actually that was one of the points that I really underestimated, because I'd been in that sort of either in consulting, in customer facing roles, business development roles, and in sort of commercial finance also, meeting a lot of people. I thought my network was decent, like my LinkedIn presence is okay and something I've cultivated over the years. And then you just find out that you always kind of go around in the same circles, the same type of people, but actually for this business to succeed, you probably need to know other people. So through like trial and error, chatting to people, and I mean, there were lots of people that were very kind and that made introductions, because they'd spoken to a network connection about integrations 2 weeks ago, and they knew they could use some help, so they thought maybe there's a common ground. And so it's been a very useful experience, but also a very kind of grounding experience, in that I definitely did not have a great network to build this business. And I'm increasingly getting there. But I find in the Australian market, people are not very likely to take a punt just on a startup. And obviously, me in the integration space, or Harmonizer as a business name, is not established yet. So the early customers are people that are the kind of, you've got some social capital going for you, but other than that, they look at the tech and they say, wow, this looks good, and then they're willing to take a chance. And there's not a huge amount of people willing to do that. We're not backed by any flashy VC, so it's just a different kettle of fish. And I feel that's a big difference with Europe, or the Netherlands, which is a market I obviously know well, where people just are quite keen to get on board first with this type of new technology. So it's a little bit different, I find.
So now let's go back to the core theme of this, which was, how did you land your first deal? Like to go from new in the market, nobody knows who you are, building your profile, something happened to get to your first deal. Have you seen South Park, by the way? There's a wonderful South Park episode of the Underpants Gnomes.
Oh, I can't remember that specific episode, but I've watched it lots, especially when I was a student. Yeah, one of my favorites.
So there's one clip where Underpants Gnomes are trying to take over the world, and so they draw up this world domination plan, which was step 1, steal underpants. Step 2, ? Step 3, conquer the world. And so, what was your step 2?
Oh yeah, I love that. I'm gonna look it up on YouTube and rewatch it, but because I'm sure I've seen it at some stage in my life. But so obviously we had grand plans when we first signed all the reseller and all the agreements associated with doing the business. And I guess so then there was that kind of big sort of leap, or I think I compared it to my co-founder with a big scary slide at a water park, that you then, the moment that you kind of go over the edge and you dive off. And that was literally what it felt like to me on 1 August 2021, when we had done all the legalities and we formally started, reaching out and like put the banner in and said, shop open, integrations here, blink, blink. And I think at the start, someone had given, with some, knowledge of entrepreneurship, had given me the advice, just start with your own Rolodex, like you said earlier in the meeting, and just try and see if people respond. Just give them the elevator pitch, craft a short demo, a short deck, all the usual stuff, and start conversations. Because if you don't start, it's really easy to kind of get stuck in an endless loop of perfecting your slide deck or your demo or whatever else. So I followed that advice, and that was pretty good. Learned how to download all my contacts from LinkedIn, and just beavered away and hit up the people that I thought had some kind of, affiliation or a good network or something like that, and just got their feedback. And that was quite useful. So and it also turned out that I actually knew a few people with some integration issues in the process. So there were introductions to third parties and etc. My Australian co-founder did the same. And so we got a few conversations going, and then it was just patience. And it still is, with an X number of leads that we know at some point in the future will likely materialize. So we've got a little board, monday.com. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to plug, but I'm sure you have something similar as well. And you look at it, like periodically, and you keep thinking, I haven't spoken to that person in a little while, probably should find a good reason to get back in touch with them, see if it's still a current thing that they're working through, and how this meeting went or that stakeholder reacted. And sometimes it goes quiet, and then funnily enough, 6 months later, they're back into your inbox and they say, it's become like really urgent now, can you help? So that's how it went, really, just kind of identifying some people that had a genuine need for integrations, and then persevering with them, and not in a pesty, like getting into their face twice a week kind of way, which it boggles my mind. But some other startups or companies do that with us, and they keep sending emails, and after the fourth one, I'm like, dude, I'm not responding. Like, I responded politely to the first one to say we didn't really need it, and then you progress to sending me 3 more increasingly obnoxious emails. And so I really try to steer away from that. And and that's how it went. How did it go for you? Was it similar or different?
I think the first deal was, so all of our deals have been signed because of warm referrals, right? They all started by one of our customers or one of our contacts saying, hey, you got to meet these guys and see what they're doing. And that's because we don't have a sales force or marketing force. Like we literally have never done any like proper sales, which very much like you is because I have a distaste for those overly persistent salespeople. Almost like, I'll tell you a story another time, but this kind of like relentless pursuit actually turns me off, and I think it turns off our customers as well. So warm referral, and just kind of stuck with them and kept talking. And the way we sold was not from just presence, not from just being there and waiting, but rather giving things away for free, saying, hey, you know what, if you want to solve that, why don't we help you get started? Oh, you want to give a CLE to your lawyers? Yeah, why don't I give you a 1 hour CLE? Oh, you want to like find that sort of data in that sort of contract set? Well, look, here's something that we know works, not even from us, someone else, go for it. And it's that sort of like trusted advisor path that led us to the first deal, where eventually they're like, hey, this is really like helpful. Now tell me what you do. And that was what led to it. So yeah, then they had a good experience, and they referred other people, and all these prospective buyers, they talk. So you do well in one place, they will spread the word, and eventually everybody will hear. It sounds like you guys are skyrocketing, which is amazing to hear.
Definitely, absolutely. But yeah, thank you very much for the invite to chat, and yeah, really enjoyed the conversation as always.